So we started out at Port Tressler to compete in this epic battle, 25 versus 25, player versus player. I've been dreaming about participating in battles like this for a long time in Star Citizen. This was my first time with the Pathfinder, so all I needed to do was get myself to the correct spaceport ahead of time, and then have their designated armor loadout so I matched the rest of the team. The startup time was fairly well organized, but I still think it took about an hour to get started. I feel like this is kind of par for the course for player content, but I feel like they actually did really good on this, getting everybody in the party, getting people in the game fairly quickly, and it went very, very smoothly. The operation was very simple, right? It was capture 3 caterpillars and bring them back to your forward operating base, right? The base was basically represented by 2 Cutlass Reds that were just a few kilometers, about 4 kilometers, from Port Wayne Age Shelter. The Cutlass and Caterpillars were marked as indestructible as per the mission rules, which was to facilitate respawning. Personally, I like to see in the future that handicaps like this were removed so that ships, if they're destructible in game, are free to move. But for the time being, since there's so many bugs in the verse, it makes sense to have some sort of at least some handicaps. Cutlass Reds for respawn points makes a lot of sense. So during this mission, my role was to serve aboard the Aegis Hammerhead as a crew member. This was the largest ship in the fleet deployed today, and it was just awesome. Obviously, the Hammerhead has 6 size 4 turrets, each with a size 4 rider laser repeaters, and thanks to the latest improvements from CIG, these turrets are now really dangerous, and this gunship is extremely deadly in the verse. If deployed in the right manner, and it was in this instance. In area defense, the Hammerhead is extremely good. The only worry was that the enemy wouldn't provide enough turrets for us to target and shoot at, but they happily and thankfully complied with our wishes, and we shot down a number of their ships with the Hammerhead. So at the beginning of the match, the Pathfinders were able to secure the airspace over the operation area, but early in the game, the opposition actually were able to steal 2 of the 3 caterpillars right from the beginning. This would be a win if they could hold on to those cats. So it was really a question of, if the Pathfinders could take those back. The Hammerhead, so to react to this, the Hammerhead was relocated over the enemy FOB, right, and told to bring the rain, which was basically shooting the enemies as they left the Cutlass Red in the respawn point. Shortly after that, though, the Marines captured a caterpillar. After securing that second caterpillar, our team was now in the lead, and they made the choice to go for the next and the last final caterpillar, which is now full of it was full of the enemy opposition waiting for them. Despite the opposition team, the team breached and secured the caterpillar, and even with defending players having the upper hand. After all 3 caterpillars were secure, it was just a matter of securing airspace. The opposition had a few clever plans, including using the Hammerhead to ram our Hammerhead. They also rammed it with a Sentinel, and they made a last-ditch effort to drop Cyclones from the air and drive in, but all attempts were thwarted by the UEE Pathfinders. To end up, we formed up an escort wing and flew off with the 3 caterpillars in style. It was a fantastic operation. From this, though, I did have a few improvements I think we could have made during the operation, stuff we could do. Let's take a look at that. So from an operational standpoint, it seems like that we could have filled in more Marines and opted for less fighter pilots. The airspace was very secure during the entire operation, and if we had run into more serious ground combatants, we would have been fighting an uphill battle to reclaim the stolen caterpillars, and it could have been impossible to do so. I understand how securing the airspace was the priority, and it makes sense, because if you control the area, you can control who can enter and leave. But in this case, with the Cutlass Reds being the respawn point, if the ground team had gone 100% to those Cutlass Reds, right, it would have been pretty difficult to fight that back because you can blow those colored reds up, right? Yep. So after the area was secured, it seems like it could have afforded to divert more crew members to the fight, or better yet, we could have started out with more Marines on the ground to secure the objective. This lack of agility may be a problem in the future for the Pathfinders. Also, the fact that we didn't secure the objective quickly in the beginning could have lost us the operation if the opposition was able to hold on to those caterpillars. For example, if I was the opposing team, I would have stolen 2 or 3 caterpillars right off the get-go and jumped them out of the area. Staying in orbit would have made it impossible for the Pathfinders to board and recapture the ships, though it's slightly in the gray area on the rules. The rules state that the ships can't hover over the ground, but they didn't say anything about them not leaving the AO. In fact, in a real scenario, they would be the priority. This would be the priority for the Caterpillar pilots. To abide by the stay on the ground rule, the Caterpillar pilot could also jump out and then leave them hid at a random location on the planet. That is quantum travel away from the AO, land on a random spot on the planet, so the Caterpillar is essentially hidden, and it would be impossible to essentially track it down. The reality, though, is if you jumped out into space, it would be pretty much impossible to track it just because of the area space to track down those ships. And in this case, whoever controls the objective controls the outcome. So if you had just jumped out with 2 caterpillars, you could lock down at least a stalemate because you're preventing the other team from winning. Yeah, I guess. And then just continuing on in this scenario, if you had 2 caterpillars jump out, you could have, one person per caterpillar, so that's up to 3. If you had 1 person per ship, they could fly those ships away. And meanwhile, you could have the rest of your forces, fighting out in the AO, trying to clear an area, as needed. And then, so also the team without the caterpillar would be split. Like, do they send out more ships to find the caterpillars on a wild goose chase per se, or do they defend the AO? And even if the AO couldn't be secured, since the cats are marked as indestructible, they could simply fly in and land at the last minute. So right before the operation ended, they could just land the caterpillars in their FOB and win the battle. The opposing team could land the cats upside down with limited time on the clock, and it would be nearly impossible to board, recapture, and flip the ship to transfer them back to our base. Another thing that we could have done on our side was we did use the Air Force to better secure the 3 objective caterpillars, right? So since the UEE Pathfinders control the airspace, it would only be logical to also secure the caterpillars, right? Even if they were manned by enemies, imagine they're full of Marines, right? Since we have the Air Force, we could have used distortion weapons or EMP weapons to hold those caterpillars in place, disabling the ships with non-lethal damage. This seems like would be inside the rules because we're not damaging the ships, but an effective EMP could power the caterpillars down, but at least long enough for our Marines to secure the ships. The caterpillars were close enough to each other that a team of 3 sentinels could likely use its 2-kilometer EMP range to hold all 3 at the same time. We're talking like just 1 to 3 sentinels could hold all 3 objectives and prevent both teams from advancing. And basically they have a simple, so for example, I would cycle out the EMPs so they hit the cats every minute until the Marine team gave the go-ahead. However, if we couldn't afford the 3 crew members to secure down the caterpillars with sentinels, at least 1 sentinel could have slowed them down. And that would at least prevented them from flying away or slowed them down enough that you could perhaps get a Marine force in the area to take the cats. Another tip would have been to use a mantis so that area ships couldn't jump out of the the area and preventing their escape. I feel like this would have made a little bit more sense than an eclipse, which really wasn't used. We had eclipse, but most of the time it was spent out of the AO, either hiding or trying to restock torpedoes. Well, that's it. That's all the feedback I have for the day on the UEE Pathfinder. I'm looking forward to doing more operations with them, and thanks for watching.